So welcome to How Does Your GIS Rank? University of North Texas's GIS assessment using GIS Capability Maturity Model. So I'd like to, I have the pleasure of introducing Chris Akin, GISP. He is the GIS manager at Dunaway and Associates, and he has almost 2 decades of GIS experience and works extensively with universities to assess and overcome their facility GIS challenges. He'll be presenting with Koby Osowski.
Perfect.
All right. CFM, GIS Applications Administrator from the Division of Finance and Administration of the University of North Texas. He is currently the GIS Applications Administrator for facilities at the University of North Texas. He is a U.S. Marine and Army veteran with 13 years of military experience, a Bachelor of Science in Emergency Administration and Planning, and has minors in Geography and Public Administration from the University of North Texas. He started as a student employee with UNT's Facilities GIS Department and obtained both his Certified Floor Plan Manager and Remote Pilot's License certifications while attending UNT. He's from Arlington, Texas, and currently lives in Justin, Texas. With that, I will turn it over to Chris Akin and Koby Osowski.
Thanks. So we're here to talk about how does your GIS rank. There's been a lot of conversation, some of it was last year, about how are we, how good are we. Over the course of last year, we started working with UNT on looking at such a thing. So yes, I'm Chris Akin, the GIS manager from Dunaway Associates. We originally started working with Peter Palacios from UNT, the Facilities Information Service Manager. He couldn't make it here, so Koby is running in his stead. We can direct all the questions to him too if you need. You want to talk about UNT?
So, University of North Texas, we're located in Denton, Texas. This last semester, our enrollment was just at 40,000 students. We've done our master plans for 2005 and 2013. We're anticipating another master plan next year, but not really sure how that's going to work out. My GIS department is housed within facilities, which is a really good match for us at this time based on their willingness to help us move forward. Which one is that one? Okay, you can read this. The results of my master plan that adds detail to early priority projects and in some areas a fresh vision about the long-range development of the campus and its character over the next 20 years. That's our master plan. If y'all just bear with me, public speaking is kind of my Achilles heel, and I think my boss knew that. That's why he sent me. Okay, where we are now, Chris, I believe that's
you. UNT, if you saw in the last one, the master plan actually talked a lot about facilities and all its growth. And the GIS has started in facilities, and so it kind of really dovetailed with their master plan. It's on the radar, at least, which is why they're getting a lot of traction on facilities. But Peter came to me asking, where are we? How do we rank? How good are we? But also, how are other universities doing it? Where are they positioning their GIS, and how are they growing? And then, can we use some metrics to start to compare people? I've been in part of an organization. A little bit about us, Dunaway. If you saw our Spark sessions, a little bit about that. We do focus on GIS from the university and campus perspective, Esri business partner. I won't go through all this. A lot of university work. So the way I kind of got involved in it was I'm involved in an organization called URISA. It's a professional GIS organization, international, 26 chapters worldwide. It's about 50 years old. Kind of like Michelle, I always say, for those who've gotten suckered in, if you ask one question, you become secretary. If you ask 2, you become president. I made the mistake of asking 3 and got on the international board of directors somehow. Now I'm president of the Texas chapter. I was president of New England, just can't get out of it. But they created a institution or kind of a group called the GIS Management Institute. And that's looking at, actually, there you go. So URISA, it's that organization for GIS professionals. And if you think about kind of how to compare that, CFTA is very specific to campus facilities management technology. All the Esri, for those who use Esri, the user groups for that, those are your software support group. URISA positions itself from the GIS industry. So it's software agnostic, it's looking at the big picture, management, leadership, how to be a good GIS professional, if you will. So they created this GIS Management Institute looking at management best practices. And they've come up with a couple models, if you will, and one of them is this GIS maturity model. Kind of how do you assess an organization and eventually get to some ranking capabilities. They're working on a GIS body of knowledge book. They've got one kind of as a manager matrix, if you will, to how do you rank your management styles. So when Peter brought to me, I said, hey, well, there's this ERISA thing. It has originally been geared towards local government, and so they've been getting some traction in local government. So we're starting to foray into the higher education realm of things. And because of the working with them and just my involvement in ERISA, we're really starting to carve out that niche of how we can start to pull in universities. And ERISA is very latched on to making this larger. A little more about the maturity model. It's a long acronym, so I'll just call it maturity model. It really is a framework. It's a framework for how do you define what an effective and well-managed GIS is. I mean, you don't know how good you are until you define something. And then you can start to assess it. You know, it looks at certain key metrics, and I'll kind of show those a little bit later, that you can start asking questions on. And then you can start to compare yourself against other organizations. And the little kind of there is everything up until then is free. Then they have this little, hey, buy into this metrics. But what we always tell people is do the free part because not enough people are doing it yet to start doing comparisons. So eventually we'll start to be able to do some comparisons. We're not there yet. Again, I mentioned it's geared towards local governments, but we're adapting it for higher education. We've, through this process, we even made some tweaks. And we added some data sets that we're looking at, removed some, added some questions. Some of the benefits of looking at this, if you think about documenting this process, you can start to document and communicate those accomplishments. Hey, here's all the great stuff we're doing. Hopefully from that, start to develop some of these champions. We were talking about that earlier in the earlier sessions. You can start to identify, you may know where you need work, but now you can actually quantify that and actually document that. I won't read all of them, but you start looking at budget planning. You start looking at some strategic plans. Bare minimum, start opening some doors for communication and collaboration, whether that's internal within the GIS department or departments or up and down across the chain, because if you start asking questions, people at least gets that ball rolling. So how does it work? So it is an assessment of your enterprise GIS, and one of the things I like to really make sure you're aware of is when you're looking at it from the enterprise perspective. You may have a great GIS from a departmental perspective, but we want to look at it from the whole enterprise. Because the ultimate goal is we're tapping into GIS in the campus safety, student services, facilities, utilities. Can you pull all those under one umbrella? So this is kind of the assessment. Let's look at the whole big picture. Two big aspects that it really investigates is enabling capability and execution ability. Basically, it's what do you have and how well do you do it? How are your processes defined? So the enabling capability, again, these are the, what is purchased, what's developed, the things you can acquire. What do you have? Whether that's data, and I'm not going to read all the metrics that we look at here. This is a massive spreadsheet, behind the scenes. We kind of really boil some of this down. 23 different elements, but some of them at the top actually have particular data sets that we're looking at. So let's rank on each of those data sets. So the 9s and the 8s, there's actually now we're up to 40 different criteria or so. So how close are you to having that data or having it, quality data, and how, how good is it? It's the measurement is a 0 to 1 scale. 0 being it's not desired, there's nothing planned for it, there's just people aren't asking for it, we're not pushing for it, all the way to fully implemented. And you kind of see, and kind of with anything, there's a little bit of subjectivity. So part of that, some of that discussion. And the ideal off of this too, depending on how your organization is, when we did this, Peter and I were really engaging with it. It was a one-on-one involvement. But if you have a large organization, each of your people fill it out. So you may think it's fully implemented, but somebody else is behind the scenes going, no, it's not. Or they don't even know it's it. So then you start getting some averages. So that's how the numbers get calculated. Is it something we'd like to do? We just don't have the money, the resources, whatnot. How does that all fall? Execution is about the process. How does that fall? How good are you doing your day-to-day operations? Are they from an ad hoc perspective to something that's very well documented, defined, repeatable, and best practice? And that comes everything from development to your communication to how you're managing the systems and data backup and recovery. I mean, it gets very thorough in all of these aspects. The measurements on this is it's 0 to 5, and they are different if you noticed. That's based on some industry standards on how you actually manage document processes and things. So they've looked at other similar studies that do these kind of comparisons. And again, we didn't have any that were zero because we hadn't answered all the questions, but bare minimum, is it ad hoc? Is this the stuff that's the word of mouth, that you just talk to each other and on-the-job training? Or is it you have those documents and you know where to go and it's just boom, 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 you've got it down? So how did UNT do? And I'm going to pass this back to Koby.
So how did we do? You can see the charts here. Actually, bad was the highest one, which is actually good for us. Knowing your strengths is good, but knowing what your weaknesses is even better, because that shows you where you can really improve. So we'll move. So our strengths, there they are. It's good to know your strengths, but what we were really interested in was what were our weaknesses? Where could we improve? So some of our weaknesses, no maintenance plans, no enterprise GIS data coordination between initiatives, no coordinating team. We don't have a champion. Facilities, our VP of facilities is very good. He helps us out as much as he can, but once we get above that facilities level, there's really not much help for us there, not a real champion. And then obviously no metadata. Nobody likes metadata, and we don't have a central, what, nobody does. When we don't have a centralized spatial data warehouse. So this gave us some really good opportunities of, well, okay, where can we really focus our efforts? And one of the things we're trying to do is trying to come up with this coordinating committee, because we figure that's kind of a good first step, and then finding a champion, hopefully at the C level, that will really be able to push this initiative for us and really move our department forward. No architecture, design, or IT coordination and planning. Our IT really doesn't understand the special needs that GIS has as far as that goes, so that's an area that we can work on. Again, our facilities level IT is awesome, but once we get above that level, we start to run into roadblocks and barriers. Other weaknesses, we don't have a budget. I don't have a budget. I have to beg and plead and borrow. You can read the rest of them there.
Actually, go back to one if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah.
One thing, 2 through 4, there's not a lot of GIS applications that have been put together, and those that do, nobody knows about them. So they may have some applications that could, and then there's not really plans for pushing that further. So that was some of the things, and part of this whole conversation too with UNT was very candid. You got to lay all your cards on the table. Otherwise you're just lying to yourself. And so part of that, they recognize, yeah, we just haven't built anything. And those we do, nobody knows about, and we're not driving more. Again, as he said, there's some opportunities that come with that, and we'll talk on those later.
And again, now moving on to the execution abilities, no strengths, that's fine. Weaknesses, a lot of our processes are ad hoc. It's a lot of, when my boss first started the organization, he was a one-man shop for a long time, so everything was up here. He was the only one doing it, so he really didn't need to document it. Now that we've grown a little bit, have 3 people in our shop and 3 students, we're now missing all that documentation, and that's a big project for me, is to start taking these processes, get with Peter and go, hey, give me a brain dump. I need to put this stuff down on paper, so if something happens and you move on, we've got this documentation. We know the processes. So that's a really big project for us. SOPs, again, that's part of that documentation process. I've started it, but it's going to be a big task, and it's going to take a while, but that's good. I like challenges. Data sharing by request. Again, people really don't know where we are, who we are, or what we do. We've been trying to create infographics and hang those around campus to kind of give people an idea, hey, we're GIS, we make maps, among other things. Come see us, we're more than happy to help you, kind of deal. Again, lack of coordination between GIS and IT. I think that's kind of a universal problem for everybody. Minimal campus-wide engagement. Again, they don't really know we're there. We're trying to get better at that by putting out these infographics and sending out the emails. Hey, we can make maps. We have data about campus. If you need something, come see us. We're more than happy to help, kind of deal. What's next?
Yeah, so we've kind of done this assessment, and he kind of glossed over some of the strengths that are in there, and there was one slide that said no strengths from the process side. But I do want to make sure, from the data side, there's some really good data at UNT. There's some really good stuff that's in place. Kind of like everything, it's a lot of from the departmental level. So the whole thing of this, again, was how do we look beyond that? How we start pushing? They're looking for still that executive level champion, but Peter's definitely a big driver off of that. So where are we taking with this? We're in the middle of writing the final report for them. There's a lot more data behind all this. We've really summarized it and tightened it up. Eventually, we want to get to that point where we can start ranking against other universities. One part of that is having other universities participate in this. You may think you're not doing great, but you're a lot further than other people, or vice versa. So really have that comparison, and that's what we're talking a lot of this: the copy and paste, the sharing. Let's start having some comparisons on some of this. This is already starting to, I think, open the doors for some of this upper management conversation. Hey, we've looked at this. We want to just have the conversation. We've had a Southside party kind of look at this. The big things, the hurdles we always talk about, the champion and the coordinator. You got to have your champion, and then also somebody directed with that, coordinating that effort. Off of that, we started talking about the application, some of the easy wins. What are we going to be able to do to start deploying this? These were half a dozen applications that were just literally thrown out there. Man, he was like, I don't know why we're not doing this, this, and this. Just from some of they've got some green inventory infrastructure or sustainability data. Let's start showing it off with the story maps. Simple campus viewers to be able to point and click and get information. There's some easy wins out there, and I think that's why Koby's been brought on board to really start making that happen. So I think they're going to see a big change over the next year.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
If you're doing your job. That's it. Oh, this was one last thing. So, like I said, Peter couldn't be here, and he emailed me. Just kind of, we were chatting. All right. This was his comment on it. Basically, to summarize, it looks at this assessment. It's structured. It's organized. They brought us on out from as an outside party. Kind of, there's an unbiased perspective that can help guide the conversation. I'll be honest, you don't have to do that. It does help sometimes to have somebody ask those questions, but this is a free assessment that you can do yourself. If you can herd cats and get everybody on the same page to want to do it, but you can start doing some of that. They plan on kind of looking at this again annually. You don't have to go through the thorough analysis every year. Once you've got that ball rolling, you kind of look at it and start documenting the strengths and the changes and start showing progress. That's it from our side. We really condensed all of it down, but we want to leave some room for some questions or thoughts from y'all.
How long did it take, the actual assessment? Did you say that?
Yeah, no, we didn't say it. We started this last year, but it was not a major priority. We were both kind of like, hey, let's see if we can figure this out together on a lot of it. The actual work, what I would do is sit down over a couple days, and just walk through it. And there'd be times we were spending 3 or 4 hours together just talking things out. What about this and how about that? But then if you're doing that with every, bunch of different people, that just kind of adds up. The bigger you are, the more people that are relevant. You're not going to need your entry-level analyst participating in this, but maybe get their input. Maybe have several of them roll up together. Writing the report's taking the longest time. Sometimes being politically correct to say, come on, IT. Let us have some access. You could probably get it done in start to finish if you started up a month, 2 months. That's just getting that ball rolling, getting those conversations going. But people's schedules are busy, so just finding time. That's where that challenge is. Anything else? Yeah.
I was interested in how you use the CMM, GISCMM. So my background in software development is that CMM was developed at Carnegie Mellon by the Software Engineering Institute. And it's really only useful as part of a process, continuous improvement process. It's not simply to evaluate where you are, but actually to use as a process to improve the different capabilities. And you can see where your shortcomings are, but it's really all about how you bring stuff up to a higher level and measurement. And so it's really mostly about measurement and continuous improvement. So I'm a little bit confused about what the whole game plan is for GISCMM. Is it just to compare different institutions, or is it part of a program that's kind of recommended for everybody to use as part of it?
I think, so the question for those who couldn't hear is kind of just talking, make sure I get it right. For the CMM, is it just for documenting where you're at, or kind of how do you use this to start improving. There's an aspect in here, again, this is just a big complex Excel spreadsheet. They're going to do some more automation down the line on it. But one of the columns we didn't really talk about is, okay, so you've ranked yourself, why did you rank yourself that way? And then what do you think you're going to do? What are some of your next steps? So part of that is, okay, how do you improve that? How do you get that from that 0.2 to the 0.4? Or just start moving up the chain. And some of that may be just we need more conversations. We need, some of these applications or whatnot. So there is that component of looking forward. And then as you get bigger and you can start documenting more of these, you can start to show the change, start showing some values off of that. Just getting the conversation going sometimes is enough. We were talking about earlier of it, get your champion out there or get somebody who can latch onto the first one. And this allows.
I can see how some organizations may need certain capabilities but not need other capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore you would be ranked lower.
Well, this doesn't look at campus safety. It doesn't look at it from a departmental level. Some of the things, and we can kind of go back. We'll just start with this one. I was going to look at the two of them. They're very broad in the sense of, how good is your data? What is the quality? What's your maintenance plan? From the IT side, we were talking about this the other day. Okay, great. Well, first off, do you have it backed up? Have you restored it? Do you have a plan to restore it? Have you tested the restoration of that? And when we first did this, and before Koby was kind of involved in this, they had never actually tested the restoration. Well, since then they have. Well, if it fails tomorrow and you've never tested your restoration, good luck, because it may or may not work. So that's where it is. So it's not looking from a departmental level. It's looking at much broader things. How are you managing your staff, and regional collaboration? Are you talking to the municipalities that you're in, the cities, the counties, whomever? Or, how are you kind of engaging with that? Because they have data you need. Going back to this one, what's your replacement plan? And this was some of the ones we were talking about. What's your 5-year plan for your data, your infrastructure, your hardware, some of that kind of stuff, What's your big picture on your operations and your staff? That collective, it's a big picture look on a lot of things, because a lot of times people haven't done that.
You may have already said this, but how did you come up with the evaluation factors? Was that a previous research study, like a survey?
Yeah, that was through ERISA. Yeah, so they created this GIS Management Institute that's really focused on management and best practices. And then they created this maturity model.
So was it like a bunch of surveys or a sample group to try?
No,
These
kind of academic type people. And if you go read if you like long black and white documents that you don't actually want to read, that's what they write. And they've put a few articles on Esri News and things like that. But it's kind of looking at best practices across multiple industries. There's a project management body of knowledge book, the PMBOK. Well, they're going to create a GIS body of knowledge book. So other tests. So I was talking about some of the rankings. One of them's 1 to 5, the other one's 0 to 1. Those come from other standards that are out there. I was not involved in the creating of this. I'm kind of, tapping on. Let them create it. And
So they do have some pretty good data, so they have a good base. Can you talk some specifics, like what they've accomplished so far?
so asking about some of the data UNT has, some of your good stuff.
Good stuff.
Where were we at?
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, we have a lot of data. My geodatabase, I track 185 individual feature classes. Basically anything outside the building, above ground or below ground at UNT, we track. Subsurface utilities, trees, you name it, we collect data. That's kind of where our biggest strong point is the collection of data. I have usually 3 students that work for me that are out on a daily basis on campus collecting data. So we have, I think, a pretty solid database of information for the campus. So that was obviously one of our strong points. Like I said, utilities is kind of where we focus because it seems like they're always throwing up a new building or digging a hole somewhere on campus. And we're pretty good about having them call us and let us know, hey, we're about to start digging. Can you guys provide us with a map so we make sure we don't hit a gas line or something else? So that's probably one of our biggest strengths as far as this assessment went.
So, where do we go if we want to get the free version?
So, I don't have the website off there, but I probably should have thrown that on here. So I asked about where do you go to get the assessment. Because I didn't put it on here. You could Google, you go to urisa.org, and there's the GIS Management Institute on one of their drop downs. And then there's the assessment. Like I said, it's a big complex spreadsheet. And one thing that we did, we added a few data sets on here, and I have to look exactly what they were. The things that applied a little more to universities that municipalities didn't deal with, and vice versa. And we've kind of, sometimes the part of this too was we almost had to clarify what things meant. And this is one I'm taking back to URISA and GMI to say, okay, we got to work on some of this because you and I could interpret things very differently. And if I'm asking the two of you, give me an assessment, well, you could rank it differently because you interpret the question differently. So there's some of that. We still need to clarify some of those questions a little bit more. But it's on the URISA website.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
I got a question about the documentation portion. Do you or anybody in here, what are you using to document your processes? I've started on my SOP kind of stuff, and it is challenging to, like if you want to explain to a new staff member how to do some things, and you provide, images and is there software? Is there, like, Word is awful at what I'm looking to do. I mean, markup ability, being able to highlight things and provide, something other than just a black and white text document. Is anybody using anything?
Yeah, we're using Word documents right now. Right now, my biggest thing is just trying to get the information
Yeah,
down on paper, and then we'll
yeah,
potentially, like you,
Yeah.
try
cut
to.
it down.
Exactly.
It's that extra level of, well, I kind of like to show a code snippet, and like, here's what, here's the key portion of this, or
Yeah.
here's a screenshot of what you're going to be facing when you process a survey, and arrows pointing. But that takes more time to put together, than the GIS is going to.
What we've done on a lot of things is using Word template, and I've got kind of a template for my template. It's 2 columns that we just keep adding rows to that cover the whole page, sorry. And throw a bunch of pictures in there. Pictures tell a lot, but it's great things for interns and things like that, because if they're learning, you write down as you're learning. So if I'm teaching you, part of your job is to document that, and then you give it to somebody who has no involvement in it whatsoever and see if it works for them. We're doing some of that from our CAD GIS conversion documentation, some of how we're integrating some of that, and giving it to, having our CAD intern work on it. Then we give it over to a GIS person who doesn't touch CAD. Does it work? And if they don't, then we got to go back and refine it. So.
I would say it depends on what you want to document. Are you just trying to document the process? The Word is probably the best thing. I use FreeMind, which is like a brainstorming tool, to show kind of a flow. Like,
Yeah,
let's go here, then
It's
these are the
flow type
5 top
documents
things,
that
and
are-
then these are the things that spawn off of that process, and so on and so forth. Sometimes if you're running the Visio model to show kind of a workflow, it just depends on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm talking about, the workflows with, decision, you gotta make a decision at this point, and here's all along, so, that makes sense.
FreeMind's free, it's just a JavaScript piece. But it's really good because you can, as you're thinking about it, you just kind of say, this is the thing, I got 5 things that spawn off of that, and it's very easy.
We have less than a minute left, I think. So is there anything else? Any other questions? Okay. Well, I suggest at least giving it a shot. Feel free to reach out if you got questions. I'm happy to walk through, just assist in any way. But again, the more universities we can get involved doing this, now we can start to gauge and see where you're at. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.